But in 2006, George Smith, so that's the professor who received a Nobel Prize in my department. In 2006, he came to me, asked me to teach molecular biology, a course that I had never taken myself. But I agreed that I would do it. So that request forever changed my life without his knowing or my knowing. That's because when I was preparing my lectures, I noticed that the genes involved in bacterial and eukaryote DNA replication, transcription, and translation are mostly unrelated. That was very shocking to me because all I had heard about or know of was life came from no life, and eukaryotes evolved from prokaryotes. So with most of the gene involved in such a vital process, even though I was, as I said, I was trained as a chemist. So my knowledge in biology was very limited, but I knew that the DNA replication, transcription, and translation are essential for life, for each of the life forms we have known of. So if eukaryotes had evolved from prokaryotes, then those vital processes should be similar, should be, easily interchangeable. But with the genes involved, bacteria use their own gene. Those genes you cannot find homologs in eukaryote and vice versa. So that really made me think maybe eukaryote could not have evolved from prokaryotes. Well, I saw that was a great discovery. So how come nobody has discovered that, right? So I thought, wow, that was a great discovery. But soon, soon I started to doubt myself because I was trained as a chemist again. So I thought, well, must be me was on the wrong. It's because of my ignorance about biology, about evolution, right? So maybe people have figured it out how eukaryote could have evolved from prokaryotes. So I started to read, evolutionary literature. And also, meanwhile, I teach molecular biology year after year. And each time I taught molecular biology, I need to face the same thing, right? Looking at the genes involved in bacterial and eukaryote DNA replication, transcription, and translation. Later on, I also look at the genes for archaea gene replication, transcription, and translation. Seems that each domain of life has its own way of doing those things, even though, from the perspective of DNA replication, transcription, the translation, archaea is more closely related to eukaryotes. But if you compare other genes, then you see that archaea are more closely related to bacteria. And if you compare other genes, right, a different gene set, depending on what gene you compare, sometimes we find bacteria are more closely related to eukaryote, sometimes archaea more closely related to eukaryote, sometimes the bacteria and the archaea stay together, but most of the time they were just separate. So that really made me question about the idea of how all organisms are interconnected while one big evolutionary tree of life, right? So I see more that instead of one tree seems is a forest of life. Well, many people have noticed that one tree does not work. So many people have been um, promoting the idea of a web of life. But I think a web of life can be the consequence, is an artifact of our forcing a forest of a tree into one big evolutionary tree of life. So unfortunately, my conclusion based on genes, especially genes involved in DNA replication, transcription, and translation, as well as other essential genes, about the relationship of different organisms on Earth. The conclusion does not agree with the popular belief, and that was what caused me a lot of pain and a lot of trouble, and eventually leads to my being fired by my university.
Wow. So what happened when you came to that conclusion? Who did you talk about that with?
I started to write articles. So my first draft ever, my first draft ever on the topic of problems of evolutionary biology was titled Were Darwin Alive?" So if Darwin were alive today, knowing what we know about the genes, especially those I saw as essential genes, right? Genes that are necessary for survival and propagation of organisms, especially those genes involved in DNA replication, transcription, and translation. That is the basic things about molecular biology. If he had known all of this and he was alive, right, what would he think? What would he do with his book, his Origin of Species book, right? So I wrote an article and I sent to, I asked for feedback from 4 friends. One friend never got back to me, and he was a friend that had helped me a lot, edited almost all of my articles before then, right? He never got back to me.
And these were 4 scientists. Were they?
Those are
What were
4
their fields?
scientists,
Yeah. What were their
for
fields? Mhm.
4 biologists.
Okay.
One friend told me, he said, I have read your articles on manuscript 2 times. Excuse me. I have read your article 2 times, but I did not make any single edit because nobody would publish that article. Another friend called me to his office. He said, I read halfway. I went through your manuscript halfway. He told me, do not abuse your position. The fourth friend gave me a lot of feedback, but also told me, do not put my name in your acknowledgement, because I do not want to be connected. I don't want to have my name be connected with such article. So that was a very surprising experience for myself. Maybe I should tell you another story happened. I think a couple of years before then. So I told my department chair about my conclusion about the origin of eukaryotes. So basically, I told him that I thought prokaryotes and eukaryotes could not have shared a common ancestor. And I asked him whether I could change my research direction from the study of oogenesis, so formation of eggs, using Drosophila as a model organism. I asked him whether I can change my research direction. He told me it is the freedom of academia. And I told him that I wanted to write a book about what is life molecularly. So talking about the differences of prokaryotes and eukaryote DNA replication, transcription, and translation. It's always about that, right? So he asked me to give a talk in a faculty to faculty seminar. So I did. And that seminar room, fortunately, there was no stone in that room. If there was any stone there, I would be dead.
So why do you think there was such a resistance to these ideas that you were presenting?
Well, it was very surprising for me because I was very naive. I thought, science was all about evidence and logical reasoning. So, and I thought that, all my conclusion was based on evidence and sound logical reasoning. And that actually my department chair later on during my hearing section when my school wanted to fire me during that time, he agreed with me that my evidence was good and my logical reasoning was sound, but he did not agree with my conclusion. And I understand, of course, with a lot of pain, I learned that because the view of how life came to be and how different organisms are connected. That is, life came from no life, and complicated life evolved from simpler life. That view, that evolutionary biological view, it touch our lives, touch our hearts, right? It really is connected with our basic view of life about life itself and our position in the universe. So many people have based on their whole life, their career on evolutionary biology, and I was the same as them before, right? It's by God's grace, I was asked to teach molecular biology, and he showed me the problems with evolutionary biology. So I changed them, from an evolutionist to a creationist. So I understand that it's difficult, it's difficult to be told you're wrong, and especially if you're told you're wrong by a nobody, and be told you're wrong in your basic foundation. Is like your foundation is not a foundation at all, right? You don't have a foundation at all. That is very difficult. I think I understand. So if I were in the same position, I would do the same thing. And since I was an atheist and I was an evolutionist, I really understand that. Let no one